Hello again. Hello, 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 my dear seekers and finders. Welcome to the Way of Truth number 52. My name is Artem Boycev. I am a spiritual teacher. This is my website, and my website contains a large collection of my writings on the topic of spiritual awakening and enlightenment. I live in San Francisco Bay Area, and I host intensive meditation retreats, and I also see students at my home. I teach the path to enlightenment through a combination of meditation, compassionate presence, direct transmission, and inquisitive dialogue. So, uh, the website also contains the information about our retreats, and it has a way to schedule a one-on-one session with me. And in this broadcast, in this series of bi-weekly satsangs, we speak about all matters of spirituality, share our experiences on the spiritual path. People ask me questions, I provide guidance, we discuss various techniques. And they are broadcasted on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So if you watching it on Instagram, please be advised that the maximum length of a live video on Instagram is 1 hour, and those usually run somewhat past that, about an hour and a half. So the best way to participate in this broadcast is live. So let me just post a link. I will post a link right now. So it's posted on both YouTube and Facebook. So if you wish to participate live, you just need to follow this link. And it's a browser-based software. It's called StreamYard. All you need is a browser in order to be able to participate. And I will be able to bring you on screen and we'll have a live conversation. So this is a method of participating that I always recommend. A live conversation is very different than submitting a question. But if for whatever reason you don't want to do that, then please feel free to post your comments either on Facebook or on YouTube in the live section, the live comments, and I'll be able to bring them on screen like this and address them. So that's it for the introduction, and kind of a slow day today. We don't have many comments, and we have one visitor. His name is Steve, so I will bring up Steve on screen. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Artem. How you doing?
Good. Thank you. How are you?
Good. So I just wanted to share a little bit of my journey. Actually, since I'm trying to do it quickly, but from
Don't worry, you're the only guest now.
so March 2023 is when my journey got extremely intense, and the reason for that is because I guess I had the luxury. I always lived with my parents. I quit my job, and then all I had was to be alone all day. And I had nothing, no friends, no job, all this stuff. So I was just with my pain. And then it progressively got worse as time went on. Every possible thing that that happens on the journey. So then so that was March 2023. And then as it got close to Christmas, there was a peak where I had been in like hell for like months and months. And then when I thought it couldn't get any worse, it got just so much worse. There were no words to describe.
Yeah, I didn't know what you're talking about.
Well, after the peak, it definitely started to get, slowly better and better. And so it took me 2 years of like kind of, I think, sobbing almost daily, rage, all that stuff, to start experiencing, I think last time I told you, a little bit of peace that I had never experienced in my whole life. And it came with what you call like blissful vision. So I noticed I was walking and suddenly I'm like, why is my vision so pleasurable? I've never experienced this. So the point of all this is that, so I experienced that in February of this year. And then very recently now in the last few weeks, I did something I'm kind of intense. And so a lot of times I know that it's my ego. And then I try to actually play into it as deeply as I can, almost like a crazy person. I'm kind of like half in the delusion and half knowing that it's a delusion. So I've always had this thing with the lottery, right? The lottery is going to save me. I'm going to win millions of dollars. So what happened is I had this image in my mind. I'm gonna buy a ticket in Canada here when it's 80 million. That was the idea, right? And it was at 60 million. And from the moment that I even had this idea and I kept it in my mind, I'm gonna buy it, I'm gonna buy it. This suffering just started, just start panic
Mm.
attacks. And so when I finally lost, I knew that something was coming because from the beginning, I'm like, if I follow this as deeply as I can, something is going to hurt really, really badly. And so, of course, when I checked and I didn't win, slowly it started to, I was already suffering, but then the really big pain came. And so, the whole point of this explanation is that even after experiencing this profound peace that I have never felt before, it's incredible to see that after that, how much pain there is and the level of intensity. This is what was shocking to me, right? How can you feel? And the other thing I wanted to share is that in that piece, the circumstances of my life, which the ego says is the reason for all my suffering, in the piece, it's like my life is perfect,
Yeah.
and it's just so contentment and all that. And then when the pain came, the worthlessness and the self-hatred, it was again almost, and there was a little bit of suicidal ideation. The only difference from before that I think you've said is that the intensity, it was still horrible, but
Mm.
compared to what I experienced before, the intensity was a lot less. um, but then, yeah, the most insane thing is to experience the peace and everything is wonderful, and then to experience I want to die
Mhm.
because I don't get the things that I want. It's just unbelievable, these two. um
At the
yeah,
same time.
yeah. And the other thing, I think I wrote it down here so I don't forget, that happens to me a lot, which I understand from the things you've explained. There are moments when I'm peaceful, then you experience sort of the preciousness of life.
Mhm.
And immediately, I think it almost comes simultaneously, is the sadness of death. So like
Mhm.
one for me comes, I think you've said that in the last live, that some people experience the third level and the fourth level, they kind of go back and forth.
Mhm. Yep.
I think this is sort of that, right? Where you're kind of
I think
preciousness of
yeah,
life, and then you're crying because you're like, and it has to end,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's, and so the thing I was going to ask is, so this is literally how it goes, right? So I'm guessing I'm towards the end. It's incredible how I can see first it was this giant pain, and as I cried and cried and cried, now I can feel it's very little. And what I'm guessing is once it's done, I'll feel a little bit more peaceful. But then in the future, I'm probably going to have another. It's almost like a depression, right? In a way.
Yeah, it's kind of like a grieving process in a way. Yeah, but that grief uh, opens up such tremendous appreciation of beauty and preciousness.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah,
It's not even possible to truly appreciate life if you think it's never gonna end.
yeah, that is so true. Yeah, that's
It
why the
is,
soul is an escape, right? The soul, because then you're going to live forever. And
yeah. It is so precious. It is so fragile. It is, you know, life is a celebration. It's a celebration of existence. But the ego grieves,
yeah,
and uh, it grieves its all attachments. Basically, the ego grieves its all attachments. It's a never-ending life is a never-ending change and a never-ending celebration of existence. So you can even say in a kind of religious or esoteric language is that life is God celebrating its own existence.
wow,
Uh, and the ego resists because it doesn't want anything to change. The ego doesn't want death. The ego doesn't want any change.
yeah,
And so uh, I'm very glad that you shared this because many people will be able to relate to this. That's kind of precisely how it goes. So there are in the beginning you kind of just sinking into the depths of pain and despair, and there's fear and there's misery and there's desperation, there's anger and there are tears, and then as you work through it, kind of slowly deeper and deeper peace and appreciation dawns. And you also mentioned uh, that kind of giving in some way uh, to the ego, while witnessing it, while watching it. That can actually be a very good spiritual practice, because you cannot let go of anything that you still have the taste for. I really love this quote about Adyashanti. It is very true. So it applies to ego, but it also applies to its manifestations. It applies to, for as long as there's still a taste for grieving or sadness, you must cry. For as long as there's still taste for resentment, for anger, you must let yourself experience that. And ultimately, the mind exhausts the taste for all the suffering. And the last desire, I said once, wrote once, that the last desire is for peace. The last
Wow.
desire is just for peace and enjoyment. But you have to kind of go through all of those desires and and satisfy them. Uh, One caveat that I would like to make is that some satisfying them in reality sometimes backfires, not worth it, or is actually quite dangerous. But you get to satisfy them in the mind. Like for example, as I was going through my own anger and rage, I had a lot of kind of very vengeful experiences in meditation. I killed myself in meditation. I killed other people in meditation. Kind of this fantasies of inflicting physical damage and or kind of hurting somebody, and there's anger with that. There's some kind of a helplessness in that, but there's also some satisfaction of imagining somebody hurting who like hurt you previously. In real life, in actuality, that usually backfires, and it doesn't make anything better. It makes it worse both for you and for the other person. But in the mind still yearns to experience this. So it's completely normal to experience it in meditation, to experience it in psychedelic trips. It's completely normal. It's a part of it. You just seeing more of the ego. You just seeing more of the suffering, because that is suffering. Like desire for revenge is suffering. Resentment is suffering. Anger is suffering. And of course, grief is suffering. But rarely people talk about anger or self-righteousness or desire for revenge as suffering. That's actually suffering too.
Yeah.
And so uh, it is normal to be exposed to that, and it's normal to be experienced that. And as you experience it more and more, and as your awareness grows, it slowly kind of transitions from being painful and tortuous to even being somewhat pleasurable. And then your equanimity grows, the presence grows, the awareness grows, and you are more and more capable of experiencing it without getting lost in it, just like your example with the suicide ideation. And also, to those who are watching, suicide ideation is very, very normal on the spiritual path, because the ego wants to die. The ego
Yeah.
wants to. The ego is not the body. The ego is not the person. The ego is something. Is a bunch of processes in your mind that have convinced you that it is the entity that actually lives. No, it's a very small part of your conscious experience. It's a very small part of the brain. It's just a character that you play. So this character wants to go away, for the human, for the individual to realize the freedom, to realize the preciousness, to realize the ecstasy that life is. The ego wants to go away, but it's confused because it has convinced you that it either is the body or that it controls the body. So the desire for the ego to die manifests oftentimes as repetitive thoughts of suicidal ideation. So that's very normal. And the advice that I give to everybody: just watch it. Just watch it. You don't have to do anything at all. Just witness the thoughts of the mind and explore the bodily sensation and explore the feelings. And it's okay to feel desperate. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel sad and grieving. It's a part of the process. It's a process. And the deeper you go, the better it gets. The more life flowers into the most beautiful display.
Yeah. And I wanted to say one more thing, which is exactly what you just said, which is this is I even want to say, because I think it can help, especially men. This is related to pornography because it's such a huge thing, right? There's so much focus either on the semen retention,
Mhm.
or just you have to, oh, you have this addiction and so you just have to stop it. And I want to share something, and this is probably one of the hardest things that we to face our ego, because these are kind of the ugliest parts of ourselves. I tried that a long time ago. I was trying to escape, I guess, something that I couldn't see yet. And I think I went like 23 days semen retention. And then at that point, I was like, I can't do this because it was just becoming too overwhelming. And then at that point, something said, go back to pornography. And suddenly I started to realize why I wanted to escape it. And it was extremely scary because everybody that is attracted to pornography is turned on by objectification,
Yeah.
right? Treating humans like objects to satisfy yourself. So I went very tentatively into it because I was very scared. And then I realized that there were parts of me that absolutely loved it.
Yep.
Absolutely. There was no empathy. There was no feelings. All there was I love this and this is extremely pleasurable. And then, like you said, in meditation, there's even like, violence and sex and
Yeah.
all sorts of things. And so this is what I wanted to share because it sounds really like honorable to, oh, I'm just going to force myself to stop looking at it. But in reality, it's not going to go away. Even if you succeed and you're like a whole year, that those parts of you are there and they're
Yeah.
not going to go away. And they're extremely scary because and then you have to embody it. Like I won't give any details, but literally, like the practice that I did was literally saying it. There are people on the screen and literally saying like stuff to things that you would consider extremely vile and sick. And I was like shaking actually in fear, but I knew that I had to face it. And so eventually it becomes familiar, and then you're kind of
Yeah.
okay with it. And then the mind says, wow, I've really become a psychopath because now I don't even feel guilt for it, which is sort of a funny experience. But it shows you that things that are very honorable, sound very honorable, they can still just be
Yes.
ways of suppressing. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It just in practice it just amounts to suppression, and you actually would feel guilt if you hurt an actual person.
Yeah.
Uh, but okay, the video. Okay, but engaging in fantasy is not actually hurting the actual person. But you are exactly right. You have to learn every part of yourself. You have to learn to love. You have to learn to love every part of yourself, including the part of yourself. If there's a dormant part of yourself that uh, treats like women as objects, or women in the same way they oftentimes treat men as objects, and just as objects in just different way, you have to learn to accept it too, and you have to learn to acknowledge it. You cannot let go of anything that you reject. You cannot let go of anything that you do not want to acknowledge. So that's actually why uh, uh, I even said in the past that BDSM, if you practice it properly, can be a good spiritual practice, or any sexual kinks, if you practice them properly, can be good spiritual practice. What does it mean to practice it properly? It means that uh, uh, yes, for example, you can be with a partner and have very rough sex, or very objectifying sex, or even kind of the very dominant sex, and explore all the dominant and submissive parts of you to a rather large degree. But there's a relationship in it. There's not just sex, there's also a relationship in it, and a relationship uh, underpins it, and the relationship is based on love. So there's a mutual understanding, there's a mutual agreement that this is play, like the dominant sex, or the objectifying sex, that this is play, that this is just something that we use, that we engage in to deeper express ourselves, to get deeper into the parts of ourselves that get aroused from that, and we allow each other these roles temporarily to satisfy each other, and to accept each other, and to accept ourselves. But the relationship is still based on love and respect, you see, because so just like this other person, for example, could allow you to be dominant in sex, to the extent that, for example, some other people might find this distasteful. You might allow her to be submissive in sex to the extent that other people might find distasteful, and vice versa, and learn to love those parts of ourselves. So, so the so this all kind of uh, points to one big overarching idea that egoic manifestations and egoic expressions must be allowed, and including all of the emotions that they bring, but they must be allowed in the context of love, consent, understanding, and being non-destructive. So that's why one of the good ways to practice it is just basically find non-destructive ways. So you can argue that, for example, BDSM, if it's practiced properly, is a so safe, sane, with stop words and things like that, is a non-destructive way to explore the sexual parts of the egoic structure. And for example, if you practice radical honesty, or in some other context with other spiritual practitioners, and there's consent, then there could also be non-destructive ways to explore the parts of the ego that want to dominate, that want to hurt, or that yearns to be hurt, or that yearns to be seen as a victim. So the important part here is the container. So the important part is the ability to kind of step back from it and say, okay, how are you feeling? There's still respect for each other, there's still care for each other, there is a mutual understanding that is just an exploration of the psyche. It's not actually trying to hurt another person in actuality. So that's unfortunately, most people who undergo this spiritual transformation don't have these containers. They don't have this societies, so to speak. They don't have these communities, and invariably, lots of judgment and aggression boils over. And so, unfortunately, many times, the people who suffer most from these expressions are the people that are close to them, their coworkers, random people on the street, their family, loved ones, and things like that. And so, uh, but it's very, I would say that's like pretty much impossible for somebody to be truly free from the ego suffering without expressing it in one way or the other. It's just a question of expressing it in a safe way. So that's why we have such channels as Outlet for Hate on our Discord, and venting, like where, because if you, it helps to express, to be seen, to be understood, uh, to have an environment where it's not judged, where it's okay. You see, whereas in the mainstream society, such expressions are oftentimes judged very harshly. So it's a kind of the mainstream society is a society of people who pretend to be good and loving and compassionate and understanding, but they're really not.
Yeah. Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that what did I actually discover the moment that I I checked the lottery ticket? And actually, I had done that a lot before at certain moments, so I felt like I was kind of getting to the end because I dedicated so much of my energy to it. When I finally saw that I didn't win, um, I could see actually that from the very beginning of my spiritual awakening, like many years ago, even when it was very, very surface, like when you learn about law of attraction, you hear about this stuff, right? I could tell that for all these years, at least like 7 years, there was this identity. And this is what's incredible. I was able to see is that it's there and you have no idea that it's there. So my ego created this spiritual identity that said spirituality is the way that I'm going to get everything that I want.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then what happened is once that kind of died, I I just when you laughed, I forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, isn't that it's and this is what's most crazy. So some people um, you have like your regular life, like in finances, relationships, and then the ego kind of creates like a spiritual life as if it's separate, and you're going to succeed here and kind of ignore everything here. So I was never someone who said, "Oh, I don't need money anymore." As an example, I'm so spiritual now that I don't need. I've always said throughout my entire journey, I've been like, I want money, right? And the identity was still created. So this
Yeah.
is how crazy this stuff is. It's like
Yeah.
I wasn't even someone who had that inclination, but it still went in there. And I think once it died, this is why I had so many moments where I felt like I was really getting to a limit, like of hopelessness, and there was nothing beyond. It was just so bad that that's why, because I think it reached the limit where it can see that it's not happening in its way it wants to control. Um, so yeah, I was just going to ask you. So basically, as I keep going, basically what I can look forward to is that that will happen again and again, right, in its own
Probably
time.
with some other thing. Yeah, yeah. The ego is a shapeshifter. Is a shapeshifter. Yeah. So it when we become spiritual, it just becomes spiritual. And you're not the only one. There are many people. Actually, I would even say the majority of
Yeah.
spiritual people look to spirituality as something that will solve all their problems. You know, and there are problems in life. I mean, the truth is that we can only solve the problems in the mind. We can only solve the inner problems. We can get to a mind that is peaceful and functional. But in life, if you want a house, you'll have to build it. If you want some food, you'll have to get it somehow. It's
Yeah.
not like nothing will just magically. Those descriptions of spirituality, just open yourself up to the universe, and then everything will just happen. Is extraordinarily appealing to the ego.
Oh yeah.
Extraordinary appealing. I don't have to do anything. I won't have to exert any effort ever again. I mean, life is not something that does not require any effort at all. I mean, the spirituality is about unnecessary effort. You see, the plague of the ego is exerting unnecessary effort. Is exerting the effort in order to fix yourself, to validate yourself, to prove something, to put yourself above others. All of this and all unnecessary effort, because it's unnecessary, it backfires. It backfires not only in the way that it drains you of energy, but it backfires in a way of a lot of unintended consequences, like global warming, greed backfires, obviously, ruined relationships, like lots of stuff. Career, careerism backfires, obsession with hierarchies backfires. So all of it backfires. But so yes, I mean, sometimes in life you need to exert effort, and many people fall to this trap. Even if you don't fall to this trap, you still usually fall to the trap of comparisons. So the ego builds spiritual hierarchies and want to climb it. So there is it's like the main theme here is that for as long as there's some unresolved pain, the pain that is rejected, it will find an avenue. It will find something to attach to and or form an identity around, as you said. And it can be absolutely anything. It can be a worldly uh, thing or issue, or it could be a spiritual thing. It could be an enlightened thing. It could be equanimity and peace itself. As you try to like appear more peaceful or equanimous or loving, it could even be love itself, and then it gets really distasteful. Like if you form an ego that tries to maintain an image of a loving person at the expense
Okay.
of others, of course, always at the expense of others, because whatever ego tries to maintain an image, it's always at the expense of others. Because when you try to maintain an image, when it's not authentic, it's always about I'm going to try to prove to others and myself that I am better than this person at X, at this, right? And then when this X becomes love, oh, that that starts looking very ugly. When people start competing and dominating themselves using the words of I'm love, and how I'm more loving than you are. So people always form spiritual ego, people always form enlightened ego. That's part of the path, and I formed them too. So it just gets painfully destroyed again and again and again. Okay, so I gotta okay, okay. hold on just 1 second. Oh, okay. How do I? I just got an emergency alert on my phone, and I'm using it as a camera. So
Oh, okay, I see.
yeah, but I'm not sure how to turn it back. How to turn the camera back now?
It seems like the camera is not off. It's just like your hand or something is blocking it for some reason. Like, I don't know.
Oh, no, no, no. Oh, really? No, I think no, it's off actually. Wait,
Oh,
wait.
because usually it would be black, but I almost see like some color. Yeah, okay.
No, this is my FaceTime camera. Okay, so I just switched it to FaceTime and then to iPhone back, and now it's
So just one I know it's like, oh, one more question, but
yeah.
one final question.
Final question. Yes.
Yeah. Can you remember when you kind of like me, you experienced like peace for the very first time, and then it was so profound that you've said this so many times, but then you're like, it's so profound that you think you're done, right? Like for the very first time, you're like, wow, this is just so.
Oh, it's always like that. I mean, I thought I was done in 2017 when I was actually just getting started, and then with every deepening, with every throwing away of some especially when identity changes. So when identity jumps to consciousness and then to transcendental awareness, it always feels like it's the last uh,
Mm,
point. I mean that is why we have so many very questionable teachers nowadays, because every identity shift feels like it's the end of the journey, and it's understandable because usually because all experience is fundamentally relative. So uh, what we tend to do is we tend to compare this current experience with something that was before previously, and if the difference is profound enough, if the difference is big enough, then we're like, whoa, this is whoa, so that must be enlightenment. But the truth is, it might be that it might even be that like 80% of the suffering and like 80% of the peace and bliss is still in front of you,
wow.
but you had suffering so much, you had been suffering so much that the falling away of this 20% feels just completely out of this world.
Oh, wow.
And so and it actually, I mean, uh you it's actually very interesting because oftentimes the people who proclaim the kind of final enlightenment and get into teaching too early are oftentimes one of the most suffering people, you see, because the more you're suffering, uh, the deeper your suffering is, the more profound and extreme and therefore final any significant reduction of the suffering will appear to be,
Mm,
right? And
wow. Thank
so and so it's completely normal. It's completely normal. When you're truly done, the things of am I done, the questions of am I done or not, just simply don't arise, and you kind of can look at it in retrospect and see, my life is very peaceful. You don't think of your enlightenment, you don't think of other people's enlightenment. It just becomes very peaceful, and it's a slow process where the mind thinks about it less and less.
Wow.
But every stage of the journey feels like it's the final one.
You said 80%. I'm like, but I actually wouldn't be surprised, honestly.
I
If
wouldn't be surprised either. It's always much more than we bargained for. The path is always much more. I was surprised by the depth of the path many, many times over. Again and again and again. I was surprised again and again and again. So I wouldn't be surprised. But I mean, you can think about it as bad news, but you can think about it as amazing news. Just imagine if what you have experienced and the relief that you have experienced thus far, and the improvement and in your well-being and your perception of life and the reduction of suffering. Imagine that times five. I mean, it's good news, right? so
that
so
sounds better.
yeah, it's just a matter of perspective. You can say, "Oh my God, I just started. There's so much suffering," but you can also say, "Oh my God, there's so much joy. There's so much peace. There's so much enjoyment and bliss and appreciation that is still going to be uncovered." You can look at it in both ways.
That's incredibly helpful. Yeah. So thank you so much, Artem. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming, Steve. It's good seeing you.
Yeah, great to see you. Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye. Okay, now I'll bring up. I wish I knew how to pronounce it. Please help me out. How do
Hey,
I
Artem.
pronounce it?
Yeah,
Hi, how
it's
do I pronounce
Maciej. Maciej.
Maciej?
Maciej. Yeah, I
Maciej.
believe in Russian equivalent would be Matvey or something like this.
Oh, Matvey. Ah, Matvey.
Yeah,
Matvey. Okay, yeah. It's Matthew.
yeah, it's Matthew in English.
Matthew in English, Matvey in Russian. Maciej. What language is it?
Polish
Polish.
language.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So hi, Artem.
Hi, Maciej.
So I have a practical question to you
Yes, please.
regarding the identification with thought and dreaming,
Mhm,
and actual dreaming as well.
mhm.
So when I go to sleep and when I'm falling asleep, right, the body relaxes, and then I have thoughts which become kind of bigger, and sometimes I get contracted into them, like identified back with thought. And then when I'm falling asleep, I'm kind of getting identified with the sleep itself, right? With the dream in
With
the
the dream
sleep
here.
itself. Yeah. And then it goes in reverse when I'm waking up, right?
Mhm.
I'm waking up, and then I notice that I am so contracted into the story of the dream that I know it's not real anymore, and then suddenly there is like an expansion, but and I'm still contracted into the thoughts of me, right? And then when I open my eyes and I wake up completely, kind of get up, I know that like definitely I'm not the thought, right? I'm not contracted into the thought again. But the whole process of getting slowly contracted into the like dream or the story of the thought, it's kind of freaking me out, right? And it goes, it freaks me out when, uh, especially, yeah.
Okay.
Especially when it's connected to strong emotions, right? Because when
Yeah,
I de-identify with the dream itself, it's like there is like a strong release of an emotion somewhere
mhm.
in my body,
That's good.
and yeah, so yeah, it freaks me out a bit, and I wonder what are your thoughts? What is your experience about this? I get from your laugh that it is common.
Yes, of
Uh,
course. Yes, yes, that's completely normal. Okay, okay, good, good, good. Okay, so first of all, good. This is very good because you have started to witness how the mind begins to create a reality in which you get sucked in. You know, so the dream reality is unreality, just like the reality of the ego's dreaming during the waking state. That's actually why we always find reality first in the waking state. Because in the waking state, at the very least, you have senses, you have sense perception. So in the waking state, there's the actual reality, you know. So and by the actual reality right now, I don't mean consciousness. Uh, I mean the information that you're getting from your senses. There's vision, there's hearing, and stuff like that. So the dreaming mind, it can distort the reality, and that can be obvious like for anybody who's dreaming. If they take a lot of psychedelics, when I was still in the dream state, if I took 5 tabs of LSD, everything became cartoon like. So it was still, I could still like see what's going on, but it was incredibly distorted in the real visual way. So it can distort reality, uh, and which it mostly manifests as a continued thought of streams and continuous stream of thought and emotions about reality. And the stream of thought is usually quite inaccurate about reality. So it's mostly uh, because you have access to all the senses. It's mostly through thought and emotions the reality get distorted. But if you get distorted significantly enough, then it can even be seen in the visual field or the hearing. Like, for example, the schizophrenia, right? And some other people with some mental conditions experience hallucinations in the waking state. So the same phenomena. Uh, so so we always kind of wake up to this very raw reality of senses in the waking state first. In During the night, when you close your eyes and all the senses are off, and you actually, as you fall asleep, you also start losing awareness of your body's sensations. The mind is much freer to dream, because there is no restriction basically on its ability to create reality in which you believe. In the waking state, you can create any kind of reality in which you believe, but at least at the same time, you absorb information from the actual reality through the senses. In the dream, it's not like that at all. So it's all self-created in the dream. So
Mhm.
you kind of so that's why we always first wake up in the reality is first always appreciated in the waking state, and then awareness starts penetrating dreaming, then awareness starts penetrating sleep. So so if you can kind of observe as the thought come as you fall asleep, one thought come, another thought comes, and the third, and then whoa, and then before you know it, there's some story, there's already like a character. That when you start observing this, that's kind of already a good level of self-awareness, because if you're not self-aware, you don't even remember how it starts happening. So this process of penetrating the nights has started. That's good. So what you will notice, interestingly, I don't know if you have already noticed, but what you will notice is that you can even like you can as you fall asleep, you might even recognize that that you have started to fall asleep. That like so some stream of thoughts, and then some images start forming, and now, for example, you are going somewhere and you're like, whoa, that's a dream. And then if you notice it, then you kind of wake up. I mean, it's not that you wake up on your bed and open your eyes, but you wake up kind of into consciousness. You realize that you're just lying in the bed. Maybe you don't have any awareness of your body already, but the dream ceased, right? So whatever we
Yeah.
realize unreal, the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever we realize to be unreal in the mind. So you would expand like from the contracted dream character back into consciousness. So you would kind of come back to yourself. So whatever we realize in unreal disappears. So the same it applies to the waking dreaming of the ego as thoughts and emotion. It actually applies to the night dream as well. But here's the thing about it. Uh, Even if you try to use this technique, and you can, like, so every time you acknowledge something to be a dream, it disappears. But you cannot circumvent the remaining mind's desire to dream by simply trying to recognize that you're dreaming, because dreams form a function. Dreams are basically unlived life. So dreams are based on the existing emotional suppression. And in the dreams, you tend to experience situations and scenarios where, after awakening specifically, but even before, oftentimes, where something is unresolved, you know. So that's why they get emotional and vivid, and that's why waking up from them is kind of has this emotional residue. And I've, for example, oftentimes cried in the morning, or had like felt, many people report that they like feel very emotionally turbulent in the morning after dreaming, right? And some moments of fear of waking up from the unreal is also normal in the mornings. So basically, uh, there is fundamentally no difference between meditation and sleep. So every time you go to sleep, it's just a very deep meditation. It is just so deep that the relaxation is so deep that, and the exploration of the contents of the mind's dreaming is so deep that you will identify with, that you will identify. So it's not a really important. So don't try to like never be identified, but just remember that if you are identified, then some experience in the dreams they are predicated on the remaining conditioning, they're predicated on the remaining suffering, they're predicated on the remaining emotional suppression, and you get to emotionally experience it in the dream. So you're still in the night, there's still the process of clearing out the conditioning. The same can be said about meditation. You see, you can be in such a state of consciousness that you pretty much never identify. You can always just witness. You can never identify with the ego during the waking time, but yet when you go to sleep, there's still this identification happens. So if you, let's say, meditate for like 5 days in a row, there would still be moments in of identification. You will similarly experience, you will have meditative experience that will be dreamlike experience, where there's an identity that is having some experience, whether it's spiritual experience or some experience in this kind of non-existent mind created reality, as simply a result of a long meditation. Or if you take a sufficiently significant amount of psychedelic medicine, the same thing will happen, right? So the question of, because you see, in reality, the question of identification is simply the question of intensity of the belief into the story that corresponds to the intensity of the emotional experience, right? So if so that's why you can be even rather deeply self-realized, and then if you take a large dose of LSD, for example, then you would still have experiences where you felt like you completely identify with the ego. It's a matter of intensity, you see. It's easy when you just have some mild emotional experience, and like it's very easy to like, oh, okay, I don't believe the thoughts, I don't believe the thoughts, right? But let's say you're in terror, and then suddenly the thoughts are very believable. So something similar happens in dreams. There's a reasons why dreams are emotional. There's a reasons why there's a character in the constructed world, and that's to get things to resolve. In a similar way, people see their past lives, right? So what is that's also like a dream-like experience. You experience yourself as someone else. Why do those experiences happen? To resolve something, to resolve something emotionally. Like, for example, if you were conflict averse, then in dreams you might start getting yourself into a lot of conflicts, right? Or if you so whatever it is you're missing, whatever is suppressed, it will show up in dreams, meditation experiences, and psychedelic trips. So don't worry that you identify. If you recognize, if you remember that you're dreaming, if you remember that it's not real, then there will probably be some fear, and the dream will dissolve, and that will happen more and more frequently. But just the fact that you identify with the dream character doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means that, okay, now we're having an experience. Now you'll have an experience in a dream that has to do with some of the remaining conditioning, and it's also needed. It's needed just like an experience in meditation, and it's need and just like an experience in psychedelics. So it always starts with the disidentifying at the waking state, and then as you work through more and more of a conditioning, the awareness starts penetrating all states. It always happens like that. And if you consider that nighttime is just a very long meditation, then it stands to reason that there will be moments of identification, there will be moments of emotional intensity. All of this is good. So when you just wake up in the morning, you will feel some emotional residue, let yourself work through it, and then you may even feel lost for a little while, but then you'll find yourself as the day goes on. Every night is meditation, basically. So just witness yourself falling asleep, witness the stories form, witness the moments when the dreams start forming, and then if you're in the dream, just be in the dream. There's it's normal. There's nothing that you need to do about it.
Yeah, and there is also nothing I can do about it, really.
That's right.
It just happens, it
Yeah.
seems. Yeah, so I kind of knew about this intuitively, but this is so strong sometimes that it's really hard to be calm about that.
Don't be calm about that. I mean, some of the dreams would be not calm at all. Some will get quite scary. Some will be very emotional. I mean, I experienced everything that I experienced in meditation. I also experienced in dreams. I experienced fear. I had very fearful dreams. I had very emotional dreams. I had dreams ridden with conflict and murder and things like that. But I also had bliss. I had tremendous amount of bliss in dreams. Sometimes like in dreams I would sometimes in dreams in a night dream I would like take a psychedelic and have a full blown like blissful psychedelic spiritual unitive experience. So all of this is part of the path. All of this, it all goes just as it should.
Okay, so that's good to know then. So one clarification I have: you often mention sometimes that you've had an experience or like few minutes of experience or something like this. So by by this wording, like, do you mean that you've had a short period of identification? So
Uh,
can I experience an that someone identified in me had an experience about this?
n- n-
And
Not necessarily. So it depends on the context. But let's say if I'm uh, talking about like psychedelics, for example, I could say like, okay, so I like took 10 tabs of acid. I had a very mild and short experience. It doesn't necessarily mean that I identified with anything. So by experience, basically, I mean uh, experiencing anything that doesn't exist in the immediate physical reality,
okay,
right?
so
So
just it could be an intense thought or something
yeah,
like this.
yeah,
Yeah?
exactly. So it could be some thoughts, it could be some realization, it could be some so anything that doesn't have anything to do with what's going on right now, which is
Okay.
basically anything that is coming from the past, right? So like I could have like some thought process, some insight, and then I could shed a tear for like a minute. I would still classify it as experience, right? Or if I close my eyes and I don't know, if I vape some DMT, I might still see some visual things. I would still classify or experience a sense of awe. I would still classify this as an experience. So anything that is not real, anything that is different basically from what is going on right now on the sensory level, right? So whether I identify or don't identify at the moment, I actually don't pay it attention. I mean, I can tell you from my own experience that as it comes to psychedelics, I pretty much never identify. I mean, you can basically say that identification is, if you ask yourself the question, like if you always know, like let's say you are with the eyes open, I never identify obviously, but with the eyes closed, if you always know during the experience, and I'm talking about psychedelic experience specifically, if you always know that you can open your eyes and go, uh, regardless of like what kind of hallucinations you might be having, what kind of hallucinatory experience you might be having, if you always know that you can open your eyes at any moment and stand up, you don't identify obviously. So when you identify, you don't know that, you forget. It's like a dream. You're like completely there. So I can tell you that, like for example, for now, uh, I absolutely never identify an LSD, and but then if I vape a lot of DMT, then there could be some moments of identification. They're usually quite fleeting. So generally, I always know that I can open my eyes and walk. But sometimes I still identify in dreams, right? Again, right? So sometimes there's no dreams at all. Sometimes I know that I'm dreaming, and sometimes I don't. I forget. So obviously, at this moment, I don't know that I'm sleeping. Yeah.
Okay, I understand. So it's I take that it's perfectly normal to like dream or have thoughts and
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't worry about the question of identification. The question of identification is basically just the question of the intensity of the experience and the remaining suffering. The less suffering exists, the more dreaming will become lucid. There will be less and less identification. Dreaming will start to disappear. It's all about continue working on the emotional suppression from the past, basically.
okay,
and
I
and
understand.
and it's completely normal for dreams to become very emotional. You basically continue shedding conditioning every night.
Yeah, it seems so. It seems like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's why it's actually important. Yeah, let yourself dream. It's fine, right? And then as you continue a spiritual practice, as you meditate or engage in some other spiritual practices, or even using psychedelic medicine, you will start seeing that your nightlife becomes kind of it starts merging with your day life. So it's like the two realities will kind of start merge. So you'll have access to your daytime memories at night. You will either know that you're dreaming, or kind of the daily reality will start penetrating dreams. The dreaming will become lucid. They will kind of start merging slowly. It can be very quirky. It can be very weird. It can be very fun to watch, but kind of as your daily reality starts to transform, your night, your dreaming reality also starts to transform.
Okay, yeah, this makes sense actually, because you are grounded in reality so much that you never go so far away from
That's right. Yeah.
from actual reality, right? Yeah. In the thought process.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. That you ground the reality so much that the mind doesn't create an alternate reality for you to have an experience in. Like there is always for as long as the mind create alternate reality for you to have an experience in, there's something unresolved, and it can be very subtle. Like for example, in my case, then the dreams are usually not emotional, kind of fun or intellectual or kind of imaginary, or it can be very not so subtle, and then the dreams are emotional. And then like I used to dream, also in my dreams I cried, I was desperate, I was angry, and but there's always, if the mind creates an alternate reality, it's always with the purpose for you to to experience something there. Osho said dreams are unlived life. I couldn't agree more.
Well, it's not really important to remember them though, right? Because
No,
it's
not important to remember at all. No,
it's just the
not at all.
emotional piece, I guess. It's the most important.
Not at all. Yeah. You might not important the details. You just import the emotional residues. The only thing that's important is to feel.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I got that already. So that's good. Okay. Well, you calmed me down. So yeah, I'm happy about your response.
Yeah,
It calms me
don't
down a bit.
worry.
So yeah.
It's all going as it should. Yeah, it can get freaky. Yeah, I like some of my most bizarre experiences was in dreaming. I mean, I've had very strange experiences. I had experiences where like dream reality and reality were merged. Like I would wake up and open my eyes, and I would see my wife walking towards me in a room, and then she would like slowly disappear. Because I was dreaming of her. It was. I had so many bizarre realities on this kind of border between dreaming and waking state, or during the dreaming. It's very much the same of the experiences that we have in deep meditations and in psychedelic. They all kind of start merged together slowly.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. I'm going to explore more then.
It's all good. All right. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye. All right, so I have some text questions, but before I do the obligatory part, which is where I am asking you to do something. I'm asking you to help me. So the first, I would like to ask you to like this video, comment on this video, share this video if you like it. Subscribe to my channel, push this notification button so that you get notified when new videos come up. So all of this helps promote my content. All of this helps me grow my audience to other people that need guidance to find me and my content, and it really helps. Please do that. Also, feel free to subscribe to our other social media. So I have presence on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, and even Reddit, and they all linked from the website. They'll link from my website, so please feel free to do that. Now, also an important part, if you are in a financial position to do so, please support our work. So I'm very, very grateful to the people that are already supporting our work. So financial support from you will help me create more content. It will also help me work with people who cannot afford to pay. So please go to my website. Let me post a link, and there is a. I will bring up in just a second. Yes, here it is. So there's a link. You can become my patron on Patreon or submit a one-time or monthly donation on PayPal. Now, for bigger donations, we also have a nonprofit organization. So for bigger donations, there's a way to make them tax deductible. So please write to me on Discord or an email if you wish to submit a bigger donation. It can be tax deductible for you. So I would really appreciate that support. It would help us a lot to ultimately want to build a retreat center in some future. Now we're also looking for volunteers. So there's an engineering effort right now going on to launch a redesigned version of the website. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be much better than what we have with the blog and comments and the newsletter. So we also want to release a book maybe this year. So there's some engineering work involved. If you have experience in UI engineering or in engineering for that matter, or if you have experience in publishing or design, and if you wish to help, please contact me on Discord or email, and we would be also very grateful. Also, if you know a podcast that might want to interview me, I'm available. I'm available for interviews and talks, and I'm available for all of that. So, okay, and then finally, the last one is that you can schedule one-on-one meetings with me. So I will also put it on in the comments. So this is a link to schedule one-on-one meetings with me. It's also present on the website. And there is a variety of different payment tiers depending on your financial situation. So in my one-on-one meeting, I use a variety of techniques: guided meditation, direct transmission, eye gazing, and inquiry, inquisitive inquiry, a very honest conversation. So I have a variety of techniques to uncover and explore the egoic conditioning. And most people, the vast majority of people who have done it, say that it's very helpful. So if you're anxious or scared a little bit to talk to me, don't worry. I mean, many people are. They invariably end up having a very good experience. So that might be a little anxious in the beginning, but as we work through it, it usually ends up being a very good releasing, freeing experience. So you have that option. I'm available most days of the week. Okay, and then finally, if you're here for the first time, please you can join our community, our Discord community. That's the link. I also posted it on YouTube and Instagram. We have many wonderful practitioners who are helping each other on the spiritual path, and there are. Looking at my internet connection is not very good. Yes, so there are many channels and many tools there, and support from other members of community. So if you're looking for a spiritual community, we have a truly wonderful one. All right, so let's see, what else do we have? So we have a bunch of questions. We also have Maxime at the end. Okay, Maxime, I'm gonna bring you up, but also got a bunch of questions. Bojan, I'm not sure that I will have the time today. Okay, hi Maxime. Did you just want to say hi, or did you want to add something?
I got the job. I'm very happy.
Congratulations.
I was looking for a job for a long time, so I got it.
Congratulations.
It was a big relief. So that's what I wanted to say, and I hope you're well.
Awesome. Good for you.
Yeah,
I'm very happy for you.
It was a pain in the ass, but at last it happened. So I'm very happy.
Wonderful. All right, let me get back to the questions then. Okay,
yes,
good.
Of course.
Good. Congrats. All right.
You so much, man.
Love you too. Okay, so let's start with this. So H is asking, is concentration necessary for awakening? So that's a good question. Ultimately, yes, but practically it can unfold in many different ways. So basically, when you practice concentration meditation, what you are really practicing is you are practicing giving direct attention to some part of your experience other than thought. So that's what you're really practicing. So there's absolutely no need for concentration meditation in the self-realized state. So that's why enlightenment is relaxation. So after a certain moment, and Osho also talked about this, all you need is to relax. Just relax and drop deeper and deeper into all experience. Relax and accept any experience. Just relax. There's no effort. There is no concentration. Just accept everything that comes your way. Because what happens, the moment of awakening, the self-realization, basically, you can describe it as a point where the magnetic pull of thought that makes your attention to fixate on it is broken. And then if it's broken for good, then it's abiding awareness. If it's broken but it still comes back, that's what also people mean when they say identify. What they mean when you say identify, all it means is that your attention is glued to thought and you pretty much ignore everything else. Once you stop ignoring everything else, if the attention is unglued from thought, that's what is experienced as this expansion of consciousness. You see, the expansion, that's a natural state. The expansion of consciousness is simply the state of mind where the attention is not constricted to a small part of your overall human experience. So that's why concentration meditation might be necessary, because by choosing an object of concentration, you are deliberately taking the attention away from the thinker into something else. That's why it's usually a neutral object, such as breath or some visual imagery, or some, like, there's some technique when you concentrate on a after image after looking at, I don't remember what it's called, after looking at a candle. But you concentrate on anything that is not thought. So what you're training is you're basically preparing for the expansion of consciousness. You're basically preparing for the expansion of your awareness that starts including other parts of your experience other than thought. In the dream state, the focus is on thought. It's even difficult to feel the emotions directly. Like in the dream state, you have an emotional experience. If it's an intense emotion, there's a lot of thought. And of course, you know that you experience emotion, but it may be very difficult to look at the bodily sensation directly because it is so painful and the thought is so intense. It is so like thinking. So once this ability is gained, once you can give direct attention, once you can shift the focus of attention to difficult emotions, to sensations, to the energy fluctuation in the body, you no longer need concentration meditation. That's what generally speaking you practice concentration for. So you basically practicing giving your attention to the parts of the experience that is other than thought. So if that is difficult, then if the mind takes the attention very quickly, then concentration meditation is very good practice. So every time that you notice that you're lost in the mind, just acknowledge it and switch the attention to the object of concentration. But you actually kind of prepare yourself to feel other things directly when the time will come, to feel the emotions directly, to feel the energies directly, to feel the bodily tensions directly. Because if the mind steals your attention any second, you cannot give enough attention to anything else, right? So it is, like, strictly speaking, this kind of relaxation into awareness and then processing everything, all the conditioning, all the trauma, all the tensions can happen without any concentration practice. But it can be very good practice in this context. So if you notice that the mind has a tendency to attract attention, to keep the attention on itself, then concentration would be good practice. That's why concentration meditation also leads to jhanas and things like that, because as you start giving the mind less and less attention, you start experiencing these other layers of reality. But it's also the danger of being obsessed with jhanas and concentration meditation, because you have all of this experience in meditation when you concentrate, but it still does not penetrate the daily life. So in order for it to truly penetrate the daily life, you have to deal with uh, with the pain, you have to deal with the emotion, you have to deal with the energy, and you would need to be able to concentrate on that. So if you only are very skilled at concentrating on something neutral, it might take you to jhanas and profound states of consciousness, but sooner or later you will have to learn to concentrate on, let's say, the unpleasant sensation in the body in a very direct way. So that's kind of what I have to say about it. So Elizabeth says, I hope that my internet connection is okay. I'm having all sorts of weirdness. Elizabeth says, hi, Artem. Could you talk about the jump into complete aloneness? Did you mostly use meditation to make the jump yourself? Thanks. You will never predict when the jump into complete aloneness happen, and it cannot be forced. It will happen when you are ready for it to happen. So you cannot force it. You cannot meditate your way into it. I mean, just like everything else on the spiritual path, it happens unexpectedly. It's not to say that meditation doesn't help, not to say that the spiritual practice doesn't help. Every spiritual practice brings you closer and closer to it. But when it happens, it will happen unexpectedly. So there's no technique to reach aloneness. There's no technique that I can give you that will work in this way. Okay, Drake says, is high pain of contraction, tension, resistance something that is unavoidable on the path? Or does it just build until you're willing to face more feelings? And if you're willing to face more faster, then it's not necessary to experience as much suffering from contraction. So my understanding of your question is that you say that, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is something like this. So you kind of avoid, resist until you can't anymore, and then you get it all in a kind of very high volume. And you're asking, is it possible to learn not to resist faster and kind of like deal with it faster? Well, yes, of course it's possible, but it will come naturally if you start resisting it less, you see. So if it's not possible for you right now, then it's not possible. You see, you're basically asking, is there a technique to reduce resistance? No. I mean, you will have to go through those experiences again and again and again until you start being less afraid of them. You see, the reason that you resist is that you're afraid, is that you are afraid to feel. Of course, you can use all sorts of tricks and reminders. Of course, you can remind yourself that you're fake, that it's safe. You can remind yourself that the sooner you deal with it, the sooner it will be over. But this inertia of the mind to run away cannot be instantly overcome with some sort of a technique or a trick. So you can encourage, you can encourage yourself to do that. But you will still work through, and you will still see the resistance. And when there's resistance, then there is delay. You see, if there's no resistance whatsoever, there's never delay. There's never delay in any reaction, and any emotion, any reaction just comes absolutely instantly and spontaneously, and leaves instantly and spontaneously. But the resistance makes us kind of postpone it, so to speak, and then when it hits, it hits a lot. So that's the dynamic with pretty much everything. That's the dynamic with anger. That's the dynamic with resentment, with grief, with a lot of stuff. You could even say the whole path is about watering down this dynamic, and it happens through exposure. So the more time you resist, and then you cannot resist, and then you give up, and then you actually experience whatever it is that you were afraid of experience. Every time that it happens, it's a lesson. So every time after that, you will surrender a little bit faster. You see, so it will take a little bit less time. That's why. So something very similar happens with meditation. You can start meditating, and then there will be resistance, anxiety. So that's why meditation is a good practice. So and other practices too. So you have to go through it. It just there is no magic button, basically. So your question, if you look at it deep enough, amounts to that. So unfortunately, it just goes how it goes. Okay, Kalori says, how often is it safe to take mushrooms to accelerate the process of emptying out? So it feels like they're really freeing me of illusion. After each time, I feel more love and joy, and it increases. It's truly amazing. Yes, I mean it can be a beautiful tool. Psychedelics can be a beautiful tool. So from the physical perspective, I'm not aware of any danger at all. So you will just if you take them every day, or like any psychedelics, you will just build tolerance very, very quickly, and then it will still work, but it will have to take more and more and more, and you can even get to the place temporarily where they kind of stop working if you take them every day. If that happens, I suggest waiting a week or two and to clear all the tolerance and start again. But remember to start with much lower dose. So if you're talking about safety with regards to psychological safety, right? So not to get into like delusional psychotic states, or not to uncover too much pain, then. So that it like doesn't disrupt your life too much. Then just make sure that you give yourself proper time to integrate. So if you can feel like you're integrating the experience nicely, so it's like, for example, you take a dose, and like within a week, you have experience, you have some realization. Then within the week, it integrates, and then you don't feel like extra raw or extra vulnerable or extra emotional after the previous trip, which usually can last like anywhere from a day to a week, or it depends on the strength. It depends on how much you've seen. So integration is of the utmost importance. So when the insight is integrated, then you don't forget it during the waking state. You normally like remember it in psychedelics, but you remember. And I'm not talking about like some big insight like consciousness or something. I'm talking about like even the smaller instance, like I've been doing this because like I had this yearning, or I always do this with people because I like you can finish the sentence. So the insight is integrated when you kind of don't forget it during the waking state. It doesn't mean your behavior is completely changed. There's still some work to do. Behaviors don't change very quickly, but you have gained access to this newly found emotional pain. You understand it on the intellectual level, and you have felt through it. Doesn't mean you will never feel through it again. Of course you will, but you are kind of familiar with it. You're not afraid of this anymore. You don't panic. You felt through at least some intensity of it. So if you give yourself time to integrate and you account for tolerance, you can take it as often as you like. Uh, in uh, in practical terms, it usually amounts to taking it, like, I don't know, once every week probably would be as high as most people could. I mean, I had a period where I would take acid like every 2, 3, or 4 days, but I was also, it was shortly after self-realization, but it was a very, very emotional time. But I also didn't have to do anything, right? So I didn't have to work. I could basically allocate all of my time to the emotional processing, and also the tolerance also was building up. So sooner or later, I started to take breaks, and also started to take breaks because emotionally it was, I wanted some rest. So please. Kind of play it by the ear. It's not physically dangerous, but it can be psychologically too intense and too exhausting and too disruptive. So kind of find your balance. Trust yourself. Trust your intuition. If you feel like you're still processing the things from the previous one, take a break. But if you feel like you want to see more, you want to feel more, you have the energy, you have the time, then yeah. Manny says, some people will say that emotions are guides. I think there's some truth, but I find emotionally driven people to have a lot of bias, and emotionally suppressed to have passive or human ideas. I mean, yes, there's some truth to that. You see, that's why I say that not all emotions disappear in enlightenment, but like the 99% of them. Like 99% of the emotions that we experience are actually coming from the past. It doesn't mean that there would be no emotional response at all. But here's what tends to happen. Depending on the strength of the conditioning, if you have an emotional response, it could be completely inappropriate if you're projecting, for example. So if you just want to paint this person as a monster because he hurt your pride, for example, or you are ill-willing, but you don't want to accept it and acknowledge it, and you're in denial of it, so you want to paint him as an ill-willing, if you have any conflict or disagreement whatsoever. So you might still experience the same emotion. You might experience the fear of them. You might experience anger towards them, and like you might convince yourself that you're the poor victim and he's your abuser, where the reality is completely the opposite. And this oftentimes happens to people who have kind of narcissistic egos, and actually they're more likely to become spiritual teachers. So be careful out there. but basically, it can be completely wrong if it's to protect a projection, and then it could be right. It could be right, but it's just very exaggerated. It's very distorted. So, like, you could be absolutely right to experience some fear of this person because this person is not wishing you, is not good willing towards you, or you may be absolutely right to experience anger towards this person because he is like really mistreating you. So the thing about this is that in the dream state, even when they're right, they're usually very exaggerated. They're very exaggerated. They're distorted. So even though they could be guiding in a way that, listen to what your body is saying you, there is some truth there. Like, for example, you're being mistreated, or you're being abused, or you're being like laughed at or humiliated, or this person is condescending, and like you have all of this painful emotional reaction. They could be kind of informative of reality in this way, but because they're so exaggerated in the dream state, they oftentimes add more distortion, then they point towards something real, right? And the distortions are usually, for example, you think that this person is evil, you completely stop taking into account that they also suffering too, and their behavior is a result of their conditioning. Or, for example, you might think that some conflict or some acrimonious course of action is what's needed, or that you need revenge, and that would make things better. So they can distort both your view of this person and the view of the situation in general, even though they might come from the right. So as I say, sometimes you see, you can be angry and wrong, and you can be angry and right. It still does not mean that when you're angry, you do good things. You reason well, and you make good decisions. You see. So all emotions, because you are experiencing them, they not only tell you something about this other person, but they also tell you something about yourself. They also tell you something about the pain. They tell you, like, as I say sometimes, when unless we're talking about childhood or the physical mistreatment, usually when you're like in an abusive relationship and you and let's say you integrate your past and you realize that you have been in an abusive relationship, you experience a lot of anger and resentment. You could say that if you're an adult, you could say that you were angry at them for mistreating you, but you also angry at yourself for being willfully blind towards it, for letting them mistreating you, for thinking that you must be their victim, and for not seeing them how they are, because it was all presented to you. You just didn't want to see, right? So the direction of the emotion is actually not very important. Every emotion that you experience, it may tell you something about the situation, but it tells you also something about yourself. And in my experience, and what I observe in a lot of people, in most people, actually, the vast majority of the people, is that in the dream state, at least, if you want to look at emotion from the informative kind of lens, from the informative perspective, then they would like tell you like 5% or 10% about the situation and 90% about yourself. And usually people focus and fixate on that part and completely ignore this other big part, and all sorts of bad decisions come from that. So that's why sometimes I say that the emotions aren't actually very informative. They are informative of your inner world in a much deeper way than most people even now are willing to recognize. And yes, there is some information about what's happening, but then it gets distorted too. So that's why I also sometimes give advice to trust your intuition over emotion. It's like if your intuition says get away, right? Get away, even if you don't experience any fear. But if you experience fear and your intuition says, you know what, this is something that needs to be done, or this is something I want to do, even though I'm scared, then trust that over the, okay, if there's fear, then you need to run away. So, okay. Okay, Thomas, I don't have the time for your questions today. I'm sorry. I offer you again to schedule a meeting with me, and then we can discuss it. Okay, White Red is this if this is ultimately about biology, why use spiritual language at all? It's all about not scaring people away by being too direct. Yeah, there is actually no reason to use the spiritual language. The spiritual language, though, has its beauty. I mean, the spiritual language is the language that appeals to the egos, right? So sometimes I have I say I said in the past, like when I was discussing Buddhism, like look at the language of Buddhism: noble path, greatness. Like it's all very appealing to the ego. I mean, you could describe it in this sense, right? Or you can say, that there's nothing noble about enlightenment. You're just coming back to just basic human health. You're just all sick. You're sick. Just stop and start looking at yourself. There's nothing noble about it. Just look at your sickness, and then you'll just become healthy, normal human being. But this framing is not is not appealing to anybody because so people in the dream state because there is the emphasis of the social acceptance. They want to be noble, they want to be great. So yeah, I mean, that's one aspect about it. But then you see there's another aspect, that reality, life, awareness, consciousness, God, the universe, the preciousness of life, reality itself is so exquisitely beautiful and extraordinary and mind-boggling and awe-inspiring, is that it is very difficult to kind of even try to describe it to a dreaming person without using some very kind of extreme language, you see. So there's so much awe, there's so much peace, there's so much bliss, there's so much contentment, there's so much ecstasy in being whole and being one with it all, and being one with the universe, and not being in denial of anything, in seizing the fight, that I think oftentimes the only way that you can communicate it, or can even give some idea of how tremendously important and amazing it is to the dreaming people, is by using kind of some very unconventional language, so to speak. So you say it would have been appealing to me. Well, okay. Um, okay. What? Pora says, I want a magic button. We all do. 29 says, hello, what do you think of TRE, trauma release exercise? I'm not specifically, do you think it's legit? I'm not specifically familiar with this framework. Based on the name, it's probably legit. But again, I don't know about the framework. I think a much more important thing here is, if it works for you, if you feel like you are getting the results out of it, if you feel lighter, if you feel more in touch with yourself, if you feel less scared of your trauma, if you feel like you're slowly working through it, if you feel like it affects your life less, even if by little, if you feel like those experiences are somewhat unburdening, so to speak, you don't need to ask me. Then it works, and if you like it, please use it. Kaspar Fluck says, Fluk. How many hours of meditation a day is actually healthy, and how many are too little if you still want to pursue a career? I mean, this is a question that you can ask, just like you can answer yourself. I mean, you don't need me for that. I mean, obviously, if you still want to pursue a career and you want to meditate 8 hours a day, you want to be able to do it. It's as obvious as that, right? I could say that pursuing a career sometimes gets in conflict with the process of spiritual transformation when it gets very intense. So there could be period like that regardless of how long you meditate. Some people meditate like 20 minutes a day just to kind of calm the mind, and still, like, I generally don't work with people like that. It's just because it's, there are many other people who can help them. It would be a waste of my qualification to just focus my work on somebody who meditates for 20 minutes a day just to feel a little calmer. So generally speaking, I work with people who pursue enlightenment, the realization of no self, the realization of non-existence of the ego. So people who pursue happiness through inner work. If you want to pursue happiness through external circumstances, through career, and you can use meditation to help you manage that, there are many other people who will help you do that. I'm not a very good person for that. So I generally advise to meditate. If you meditate, it doesn't have to be every day. It can be like 2 or 3 times a week. But I generally advise to meditate for at least an hour and a half or 2 hours. If it's difficult for you to meditate for that long, well, that's another story. Then we can start with something shorter. We can start with like 20 minutes meditation on concentration meditation. We can start with self-compassion meditation, like lots of things that can be done. But sooner or later that would be the goal. So if you just want to like have short meditation to manage your life, that's I'm not a person who can give good advice. Never worked for me. I mean, to some extent it did, but it was just a very short period of time before the real stuff started to happen. Daniel says, what do you mean when you say that the ego thinks it can control the body? That's exactly what I mean. So the ego thinks that it kind of owns the body. It thinks that like this thinker in the mind, that the body belongs to it and it controls the body. That's actually not true. The body works by itself, and the brain is part of the body. This thinker is a very, very small part of the brain. Are you saying that any impression of control over a body is egoic and therefore imagined? From the egoic perspective, yes. I mean, if you have not went through the period, a rather long period, where you have very deep realization that your body works by itself and that there is no free will, then you probably wouldn't know the difference. Like I can say that from the perspective of from my current perspective, yeah, I mean, I can say that I fully control my body. But the ego, what I thought I was, did not control the body at all. So when the dissolution of the imaginary character happens, the ego doesn't control anything. Actually, it just narrates and it hurts. so from the perspective, that's why there's like this subjective, the period. But that's why there's like this period that from the subjective experience, it feels like there's no control, and so people start saying things just happen. There's like no control at all. There's no controller. There's no self. Like there's no free will, because because it's a death of kind of one identity and the reemergence of the actual real human being. So from the egoic perspective, it has no control of the body at all. So if you kind of still confused about this, you're probably somewhere in the middle of this transformation. That's what I would think. Yeah, just narration it first. Yeah. Okay. Last question, I think. I have holding on to. Okay, there's something wrong with my reading comprehension. I have holding on to some parts that I feel as tightness on my chest. When I try to let them go, there's a lot of resistance, and it feels like I'm going to die intensely. What do you recommend? Okay, well that's normal. So what I would recommend is don't try to let them go. Instead, become curious about this tightness. Become the witness of this tightness. Become the explorer of this tightness. Explore it. It is safe to explore. Aim to become closer to it. Aim to look at it deeper. Aim to spend more time with it. Aim to become more intimate with it. That's what I would recommend. But there could still come up a lot of resistance, and there could still come up with some fear. So when the fear comes up, do the same. Become interested about the fear. Become welcoming of the fear. Become accepting of the fear. and kind of befriend it all. So instead of trying to remove something, befriend it. Befriend everything. Befriend every part of your experience. That's my recommendation. Befriend every part of your experience. Okay, so Daniel says fascinating things. Colores says, is it necessary to meditate beyond emotional release and just rest as awareness for the rest of the time? If you set out for an hour and a half and the release happens after 30 minutes. No, not necessarily. If you feel like you went over the kind of emotional peak of the meditation, I mean, you may still lie down and just enjoy and the bliss and quiet, or you may enjoy the bliss and quiet taking a walk. It really doesn't matter. Yeah, you know, if this is something that is needed on your path, at your stage, you will feel the pull to do it. You will not want to get up yourself because you'll just like it, so don't worry about it. Abbas says, thank you. You are most welcome. All right, guys, that's it. This is thank you for the retreat. Thank you to everybody who came. Yeah, so please, once again, like, share, subscribe, invite your friends. I am available. Schedule one-on-one meetings with me. Come visit me at my home. We'll have a retreat in California in September. I hope to see many of you. Okay, we have some other questions, but I don't have the time. It's been so I'll see you in a couple of weeks. I'll see you on my Discord. Best of luck to you on the spiritual path. Love you all very much. Bye.